This presentation will look at the River Severn and evaluate how effective the river basin has been managed to help reduce the risk of flooding of this region, covering 21,000 square kilometres within parts of Wales and England.
On the screen we have a few key terms that we need to know. The first is Environment Agency. Do you know what this means?
The Environment Agency has been set up to protect and improve the UK environment. They create plans on how best to manage the coast and river basins. The Environment Agency works with Severn Trent Water Company to manage this region. Do you know what river basin means?
A river basin is any area of land where precipitation falls and collects within that region and that drains into a river. We will be looking at the River Severn drainage basin.
Pause the show and make a note of the key terms all about the Environmental Agency and River Basin before moving on.
It is important that we can properly locate our case study. The River Severn flows 220 miles from Plinlimmon in the Cambrian Mountains, north through Wales into England towards Shrewsbury before heading south through Bewdley and Gloucester towards the sea at the Severn Estuary close to Bristol.
The Severn Drainage Basin, which is the pink region on the map, extends from the Welsh uplands through the Midlands and south to the Severn Estuary. Over 5 million people live within this drainage basin.
80% of this drainage basin is based around agriculture and forestry. These rural activities do affect the water quality, often spilling fertiliser into the River Severn, harming the fish and other aquatic life.
Pause the show and make sure you can properly locate the River Severn before moving on.
Not far from the River Severn source in Plinlimmon, high up in the Cambrian Mountains, a coniferous forest has been planted. This is classed as a soft engineering scheme.
The benefits, shown in the yellow box, are that the trees have helped stop flooding by binding the soil together with their roots and intercepting the relief rainfall so that the vegetation soaks up the rain rather than it flowing over the land as runoff and filling up the streams.
The negatives of this scheme, though, are that the trees have taken a long time to grow and mature enough for them to be able to intercept enough water and reduce floods downstream.
Pause the show and make sure you can understand the effects of afforestation on the upper course of the River Severn before moving on.
In the upper part of the course of the River Severn, Clywydog Reservoir has been built. This is a hard engineering method to manage the river. It was made to help regulate the water level of the River Severn by storing the winter rainstorms.
The benefit of building the Clywydog Reservoir has been that it has helped regulate the River Severn water flow and reduce the threat of flooding in the lower Welsh mountains. By releasing the water throughout the year, it means that the water can be kept flowing, which helps with the water quality. The stored water has also been used for recreation in the local area and generated money from tourism.
The negatives of Clywydog Reservoir, apart from making half a valley submerged, are that during some of the heavy storms, the managers had been accused of releasing too much water, which had led to floods over the farmland below the dam. Overall, though, the benefits have outweighed the negatives.
Pause the show and make sure you can understand the effects of building this dam on the River Severn before moving on.
The River Severn, within the middle course, flows through a number of large settlements such as Bewdley. The Environmental Agency have invested in temporary flood defences called demountable fences. These are great in allowing the town to genuinely retain its natural beauty, but in times of potential flood crisis, they are able to quickly erect temporary fences. This allows the water level to rise further above the natural banks, increasing the capacity of the channel whilst protecting Bewdley from flooding.
These demountable fences are not perfect though, because although they protect Bewdley, once the water flows past these flood defences, the land downstream of these are flooded a lot more than usual.
Pause the show and make sure you can fully understand the effects of using these demountable fences upon Bewdley in the River Severn before moving on.
Many view dredging as the way forward to protect settlements along the River Severn. This is when the riverbed is dug up, making the river deeper so that extra water can flow through the river rather than flooding. The Environment Agency, though, say that this method costs an awful lot of money, so despite many residents wanting this, it is unlikely to continue.
Another method used along the River Severn is using old barges and scuttling them. This means they are sunk by the riverbanks and then filled up with mud dredged up from the riverbed in hopes that the riverbeds are protected. This method, however, is not environmentally friendly and unlikely to make much of a difference to protecting the land from flooding.
Pause the show, make sure you can understand the effects of these not so successful methods upon the River Severn before moving on to look at an exam question. Here we have a typical exam question. This has been bugged to help us better understand what it wants. It's asking to think how well the River Severn has been successfully managed to prevent flooding over its course from source to mouth. Try and include at least 3 different ways from those mentioned in the show. For each method, you need to write about the benefits of how the flooding has been reduced, as well as any negatives. Always develop at any points made, giving multiple effects. Try and finish each of your chosen flood reduction methods with an overall review of whether it has been successful or not. Make sure that you write an overall summary at the end to show how well you think that the River Severn has been managed by the Environmental Agency through soft and hard engineering methods. Why not copy down the question shown and have a go? This concludes this show looking at the assessment of the management of the River Severn basin.